Welcome back everyone to Jface Games. This is an off-the-cuff video. We're talking about stances. There's a couple games that have done it well, there's lots of games that have done stances, but I think that there are a couple games that I think are really interesting to just talk about real quick. But mainly I'm going to get to an idea I had. You see, I was recently, as in today, writing a blog or a write-up on just mechanics. And this one was on decision trees, and I was trying to analyze sort of different ways that people solve decision trees and sort of how you have gradients of risk and how you use those gradients of risks within your decisions, right? And that brought up the idea of stances, because I think stances are I don't want to say easy, but I want to say elegant solution to having risk and making decisions. You have stances. The One Ring, if I come down here, has these four stances. You've got forward stance, open stance, defensive stance, and rearward. And the idea being that forward is you're better at attacking, but you're not as defensive. And then they have this little, which is, I think this is really neat about this game. Then they have this little, when you're in forward stance, you have a little extra action you can do, or a little bonus ability. Open stance, you don't have advantages, but you can rally your comrades. Defensive, you're not as good at attacking, but you're better at defending yourself, and then you can protect people. And then rearward in that game is, in essence, it's like all of these three are in essence front line, and then back line is your rear guard. In essence, it's the archers, because this game is gridless and sort of much more what's conceptual in nature. And you're protected in the rearward as long as the people that are in this area, the melee, are even with the bad guys. So meaning if you've got four guys in the front, one guy who's in the rearward, and there's four enemies, you're good. That guy in the rear is protected. But the second if there's six enemies, that means they can get past and they can get to him. So then this person can attack. Anyways, that's the stances in One Ring. Really cool conceptually. I'm going to bring up Brimstone, which is one of the guys on our Discord who created Brimstone. You can check that out at jface.com. But what I thought was this really cool is that he has, it's almost like stances, but in essence he has a skill die, and how you use that skill die depends on the action you take. And this is kind of similar to stances, meaning that if I take an accurate action, I get to roll that skill die with my attack. If I take a forceful action, I get to roll that skill die with my damage. If I create an opening for my action, I give that skill die to a friend. If I'm taking a defensive action, I am using that skill die with my defensive roll. And then you have this sort of like, you're going to get hit. It's like reckless, right? So I kind of turn this into these four stances, right? You've got, in essence, a defensive stance where you're focusing on your own survival. A tactical stance where you're helping people. Offensive stance where you're being aggressive. And then I put focused, and this focus stance to me combined the ranged and reckless, meaning that you are very defenseless, but you have a big reward, right? It's almost like offensive times two, like it's offensive plus, right? Now, I then went through all this other stuff down here. I kind of analyzed things. I tried to go through different ideas, and then literally, after going through all of this, I wrote this one bullet point about stances, and it all of a sudden made me start thinking about something entirely, and the article pretty much stopped at that point in time. Because, look, it's my articles, I can do what I want. And two, I really liked the idea, and this is where we're at. The idea being that if you look at something like One Ring, you have these powers that are unlocked when you are in a stance, right? I am in an offensive stance. I now have the ability to, what was it called? I am offensive stance or forward. I now have the ability to intimidate, right? I'm forward, I can intimidate. I am in a defensive stance. I now have the ability to protect an ally. I love this. I think it's a really cool idea. But what it made me think about is what happens when when abilities are primed off of you being in a stance and an ally being in a stance. Right? So what happens if you are in offensive and someone else is in tactical and you're nearby each other, right? So now what happened in my brain is maybe you have this, yes. When you are in offensive stance, you can intimidate. But If you are in offensive stance and you've got an ally who is in tactical stance near you, maybe now you get called shot, right? Meaning that like you are getting an opening because they are doing something to distract or they're being tactical and you are offensive. So now you have a called shot, right? This is a new power that you have access to because you are next to someone who's in a tactical stance, right? Now this Venn diagram, I drew it because I love drawing Venn diagrams. They're fun. Everyone should be able to draw a Venn diagram every day, right? But the problem here is that offensive and defensive technically would be touching as well. Like technically there would be an ability. I don't like that this offensive stance is only touching, focused, and tactical. It should be technically each of these gets something from all of them, right? So what's another example I gave in here? I also said that, oh, maybe if someone is in, whoops, sorry. Maybe if, there's a gift from holiday gifts for the family. Maybe if somebody is in tactical stance and you are in focus stance, maybe you get an extra action, right? Maybe it's like you're so locked in that they're able to say, hey, take another shot, right? Or something along those lines. So I think this is where now anyone in the community can start having fun with this kind of idea, like run with it, where what would be the different abilities that open up to you? And so does that mean that players, let's troubleshoot. What's the problem here? Does that mean that the optimum build is 4 characters all in all 4 stances? Not necessarily. There might be a problem there because if you're all constantly in all 4 stances, whoever's in the focus stance is very susceptible to being killed potentially, right? Maybe it's a high risk being in this stance. So it's got to be specific scenarios where you even go there. Or maybe the fight is so deadly at the moment that most people are trying to be defensive. Like, I like, besides timers, I really like the idea that you have a power meter that kind of goes up and down, up and down, up and down. In my current game, Scattered Isles, there's sort of a meter of that sort where this thing kind of keeps fluctuating on your turn, where all of a sudden you get a little bit better over a couple rounds and then maybe you go down. I think that the example I gave previously about 13th Age and how they have this sort of mechanic where every round the heroes get better, and to start the combat the monsters are very scary, and so you're trying to, like, that first round you're trying to weather the storm or be, out of the way. So it could be that everyone's kind of defensive at first and then someone finally pops into tactical to give this other defensive ability, and then so I think this is interesting. I think it has legs, it has some potential, and I'd be curious what you guys think. So leave comments, hit subscribe, check out some of the other videos. Check out the 13th Age video. Check out, I think that video was sort of on, I'll link it. And look forward to talking to you guys soon.